Welcome, everyone, to Mayhemtainment 9. We're going to talk about the playoffs and a little bit about the Super Bowl in this. I am your host, JD, and I am joined by my executive producer, Mizpah. Mizpah, we are going to be talking about the playoffs in this. Two great games. But before we get to that, let's just talk about let's not talk about it. I want to tell you, Marcus Frederiksen, he does the music. He plays us in and out of every episode. Make sure you check him out, reverbnation.com/Marcus Frederiksen. We're on YouTube, Rumble, and Facebook. Just search Mayhem Media. And starting next week, after next weekend, you should be able to visit bonfire.com/store/JDEDESIGNz, all lowercase, and JDEDESIGNz has a Z at the end of it. And some Mayhem Media and Mayhemtainment apparel will be available on our storefront finally. So bonfire.com.
Bonfire.com/store/JDE Designs with a Z on the end.
Yes, that's correct. And it's also all lowercase to make it easier. So check that out next week. We'll have some apparel, pick some up. Mizpah, let's start with the Eagles and 49ers game, because I think we're going to be talking mostly about that, because there's a lot of stuff that happened in that game. Let's start off. The 49ers were certainly had some injuries, and it certainly affected this game. First of all, they lost their first two quarterbacks earlier this year, Trey Lance and then Jimmy Garoppolo. He also went down. So they lost their top two quarterbacks. And then Brock Purdy, who was a seventh-round pick, apparently he was a star in waiting. Without those two injuries, who knows how long it would have taken him to actually get a look, maybe. And, you know, he got injured in the first quarter now. He got injured in the first quarter.
Yeah.
So we didn't get to see much of him in this game, but he was doing okay. It looked like it might have been a tough game for him, but I think they would have battled.
Considering he was the very last pick of the draft.
Yeah, oh, that's true. Yeah, I remember you telling me that. Yeah, he was actually the last pick of the last round of the draft. Yeah.
And the talent that he shows as a rookie in his seventh game playing for the NFL in a playoff game, then nonetheless. I was impressed with him. I think he definitely has some refinement needed.
Yeah.
But what I saw, there were definitely some flashes of some greatness there.
Yeah.
I mean, he was on point with a lot of his throws. He didn't make a whole lot of mistakes. He made a couple, but
there was the one where he had the what was it, the interception or the fumble? When he got hit, I believe. Actually, it was when he got hit. Actually, his the play he got injured. Actually, it was a fumble. So I believe that was, if I'm not mistaken, and someone out there, if I'm wrong on this, please fact check me. Leave it in the comments. I believe that was his first fumble of the year, Brock Purdy. I believe that was his first fumble since he had started playing. So
yeah, I believe so as well.
He does protect the ball very well. Let's talk about that hit. It was a nasty one, certainly. When you get hit in the front, when your arm's coming back and then about to go forward, that's always a dangerous hit. And I guess he just couldn't grip the ball, or I don't know exactly what happened there, but they did take him out. Josh Johnson, who was their fourth string quarterback, then came in, and then he got injured in almost a very similar hit, except he got planted and got a concussion instead of an arm injury.
Yeah, so, I mean, I watched the play where Purdy got taken out, and when you watch that, his arm flexes back at the elbow pretty hard, pretty violently, pretty quick. So I'm sure that had a lot to do, because, I mean, those muscles pretty much control your grip.
Yeah. Now Josh Johnson then gets injured, of course. Now they bring Brock Purdy back in. Their emergency quarterback was Christian McCaffrey, and the fullback Jusic, I think. I'm sorry, I think I mispronounced the name there. Jusic.
Yeah.
So when they brought Brock Purdy back in, he he only threw 2 passes, okay? And we talked about this when we were watching the game. It looked like, I don't mean this to be sexist, but it looked like a girl throwing with her left hand, a right-handed girl throwing with her left hand. Those 2 passes he threw were ugly as anything I've ever seen from a quarterback. So he clearly couldn't throw the ball. What are your thoughts on? I think they should have put Usyk in the game or Christian McCaffrey in at quarterback and seen what he could do, because they could at least throw the ball. There was no threat for Brock Purdy to throw the ball. Once they brought him back in after Josh Johnson was injured, that to me was them giving up. I think they gave up at that point because Brock Purdy could not throw the ball.
Well, I think it was a tough call for them to make regardless because, I mean, Christian McCaffrey, Cafferty, they had a drive where it was just him
Yes.
the whole way down the field.
Yes, he was responsible for their 1 touchdown. That whole drive, it was him. It was all him going down, and then he scored the touchdown. But that's what I'm saying. Why not run some wildcat then? Get him. He can. If he's capable of throwing the ball, why not give him a chance or two to throw the ball? You're down by 2 scores. It's 7-21 at the time in the fourth quarter when you lose Josh Johnson and you decide to bring Brock Purdy back in, who can't throw the ball. Why not just bring, after that first drive where Brock Purdy cannot throw the ball, it's clear. He tries once or two times, and they're the worst passes. He clearly can't throw the ball. Why not bring in Christian McCaffrey or even Usyk and see if they can throw the ball? At least then they're a threat. You know what I mean? Then all the Eagles had to do was play the run after that. That's all they had to do for the remainder of the fourth quarter.
Well, I guess my question would be, if you make McCaffrey the quarterback, then who takes his place on the line?
Well, they got another running back who is at least not, I mean, obviously he probably doesn't get much playing time with Christian McCaffrey, but you got to have a backup for him. So they got to have somebody who's at least capable. And with Christian McCaffrey, he's capable of running doing a QB sneak, running around the outside. He's capable of using the wildcat and using that to his advantage. But he's also a threat to throw the ball. That's the difference. I think that's what I'm saying. Brock Purdy, bringing him back in, that ended the threat of throwing the ball. The Eagles did not even have to worry about that.
And I do agree with that. I see both sides there. I can see why they didn't want to put McCaffrey in as the QB, but at the same time, in a situation like that, why not give it a chance when all other options are off the table?
Yeah, you can't re-out. You got 13, 12 minutes left, and you're down by at least 2 scores at that point. You can't just run the ball. You have to be able to throw the ball. You have to be able to try and get down the field quickly. And I don't see why they didn't take a chance. They had Christian McCaffrey in at the Wildcat one play. It was a run play. It didn't go anywhere. And then they were like, oh, it's not working. It's like, wait a minute. If he's capable of throwing the ball, or if Usyk is, Christian McCaffrey or Usyk, one of them, if they're the emergency quarterback, they have to be capable of throwing the ball. At least simple little passes. You know what I mean? At least short little passes. If they can complete some passes, at least then it opens up. Then maybe if you put Usyk in, then McCaffrey can still be the running back. Then you got the run and the pass. Maybe you get some play action going. There's potential there. But with Brock Purdy not being able to throw the ball, all you're doing is handing it off to McCaffrey. They put the game on his shoulders, and he's a great player, but you can't ask him to do that against the Eagles defense. They're too good this year.
They tried, and look what happened.
Yeah. Let's talk about a couple other things. The catch early in the game that the Eagles, that wasn't a catch. When they rushed back to the line and called a quick snap, we talked about it. We thought they were just trying to keep the momentum going after a long catch. But the wide receiver, great call by the wide receiver, and he called to go quick, and they went, and there was no chance to challenge, no chance for replay, nothing. So they got away with there, and that's, you know what I mean. That's, if you're capable of that, then why not, right?
Well, yeah, and they did that pretty seamlessly too. Even the announcers didn't pick up on it till after the fact.
Yeah, until after they had already scored and went to commercial break. They came back and they're like, "Oh well, the Eagles got away with one." I mean, it was pretty clear. Yeah, they did. But great awareness by the receiver to get up and know he didn't catch it and to call for, we got to go. Let's call the play, and they got away with it, and that's credit to them. The punt that hit the wire.
Oh, you mean the punt that they didn't show again in any replay at all?
Yeah, it was apparently they didn't have visual on the wire. They didn't see that there was a wire. That's what interfered with it, I guess, and that's why they didn't re-kick the punt. But yeah, the punt, it was clear that it hit something. I mean, and it hit the wire. So, but that's unique. I don't that it's not very often that you see a punt hit something in the sky. And of course, the rule is if it hits anything, you have to re-kick, but there has to be visual evidence of it. So that's why they didn't re-kick it. They couldn't clearly see that it hit the wire.
I mean, there is the giant Megatron in the Cowboys Stadium that I think people make it a goal to try to hit.
Yeah, they actually had to raise that, didn't they? They had to raise that up some after the first preseason game because both the punters were hitting it multiple times. And they kept having to repunt, and then they kept moving. They were like, all right, move over to that hash mark. You can move over to that hash mark. You can punt the ball. The Tron will be out of the way.
Yeah, it was a mess.
Yeah, they had to go to backup chains. So
that's not the first time I've seen that this whole season.
That's crazy. I don't think I've seen that myself. At least not in the more modern day. Back in the 90s and stuff, it used to happen once in a while, but not in the more modern days so much. Are the chains really useful at this point? Everything's camera, everything's digital. I think the chains are more for show than anything else anyway.
Yeah, probably.
The calls by the officials, I think they're good for the most part. A lot of people yeah, I think the calls by the officials were good. There was penalties. The 49ers were plagued with penalties, especially defensive penalties. They had 11 penalties for 81 yards, and a lot of them defensive penalties that just kept the Eagles' drives alive.
Yeah, there was at least 3 times where they were third and quite a few yards, and then a penalty happened, and all of a sudden it was 1st and 10.
Yeah. That happened. Yeah, that happened quite a bit, especially on that drive where they got the to 28 in the second half. There was I think 2 different penalties in that drive alone that gave them the first down, and that just killed them. The Eagles, by comparison, had 4 penalties for 34 yards. I don't see anything. There's the penalties that the referees were calling looked like penalties to me. And other than the drop the ball, which wasn't a penalty, I didn't really see that the refs missed too much in that game either.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there. They may have been a little stricter than I've seen in the past with other games, but every call was a legitimate call that I saw. Now, I do have an interesting question for you, though.
Yeah.
If the 49ers hadn't gotten 81 penalty yards and didn't allow the Eagles to turn over 3rd down and longs 3 or 4 times, do you think the 49ers would have possibly had a chance at winning this abomination of a game?
I think up until Josh Johnson got injured and then they put Purdy back in, I think they still had a chance. I think there was still a chance, but I think the minute they put a quarterback in who couldn't throw the ball, and all you're going to do is run, I think that was when it was over for them. I don't think they were able to do anything after that. And they didn't do anything after that. They only scored 1 touchdown. And Josh Johnson, he was not really doing very good either. He was getting some passes in and stuff. So I think they might've been able to make a shot. They would have I think they would have given it a really good go, but without a quarterback that can throw the ball, that was the end. That was the end for them. And you're right. I think both games were being a little bit more stricter than we've seen in the past with some of the penalties, pass interference and stuff that are discretionary calls, running into the punter. And apparently I just found out, according to Gene Sarator, I heard in one of the games that some of these penalties are discretionary. I think that's a mistake. What are your thoughts on that? I think giving referees discretionary power creates for inconsistent play calling.
See, that's tough because I could see there being times where, let's say somebody's in the air and collides with the kicker, for example. I feel that there should be some discretion there because you can't control your body in midair.
I see what you're.
On the flip side of that allows for inconsistency.
Yeah, and that's my problem. I don't think the Zebras should be having discretionary power on the play calling. I think if it's the way it's written, that's the way it is. If it's a penalty, just like some of the pass interference penalties that we saw in both games it was because a dude had his arm wrapped around, and even when they got it, their referee guy who comes in, who they bring in on the announce team, and he was saying, "Oh, when you get turned," he said in the one of the pass interferences that he'd like to see them get turned a little bit more, and but it is still a penalty, and I think that's what I'm saying. It shouldn't be up to the Zebras. It should be very clear what the penalties are, and when it happens, you call them. I think giving them discretionary power creates for inconsistent play calling, and I think that's a dangerous place to go. Then you get these people who are making up stuff online right now. Let's talk about the Chiefs and the Bengals because that's where a lot of the crazy stuff is coming from. It was a close game, came all the way down to the end. Absolutely.
I thought it was a great game. It was a mess, but it was a great game.
Yeah. I think it was a great game also. I don't think it was a bad in any way. Of course, the memes and the complaints that everybody was online complaining about all day today were that there was a bad call at the end. Let's talk about that. I think they're just complaining to complain, but let's talk about it. Then we're going to show the video of it. It's the Mahomes scramble at the end. They get the first down, but then there's a late hit call. They get 15 yards. It puts them in excellent field goal range. They get the field goal. They win the game. The main complaint that I've seen online today and social media today was that there was holding on the play, holding on the Chiefs, which would have offset the personal foul hitting him out late hit on Mahomes on the hit out of bounds. I looked at the play. We're going to show it here in just a second. I did not see any holding. I said there's some questionable things maybe, but I don't see a clear holding on that. I don't see anything that I would call as holding. Again, that's where the discretionary thing, that's where some of the discretionary thing that we talk about is, does it come down to the letter of the law? Is it holding? I also don't think so. Mizpah, I think, disagrees with me a little bit on one of this. So let's put the clip up, and then we will talk about it in just a second. So here's the clip. Of course, the NFL owned the rights to this clip. We did not own the rights to this clip. But here it is.
Right now, it favors that, but you still got a chance to clock it. Take your time and take the shot down. Here's Mahomes rolling out on 3rd and 4. He's going to go for he's got the marker. He's got the out of bounds to stop it. And Osai was hurt as he hit the bench. And a flag's coming in to put him 15 yards closer. Oh my gosh, the only time he had to use the legs fully, he turned on and he put it on himself, and that's going to put them in position to get
personal foul, unnecessary roughness, defense number 58.
And that 15 yards
from the end of the play
is going to take this all the way into an inside of about 40-yard field goal attempt to go to the Super Bowl. Oh, and right there at the end, Gene playing great all day and can't make that decision.
Yeah, guys, on this play, you can clearly see that Patrick Mahomes has both feet out in the white.
All right, so you saw the clip now. You think it's the center, right? Or is it the right tackle? That's what it was.
Yeah, I thought it was possibly number 53.
57, I thought.
57, maybe it was 57.
Yeah, I think 57. You think when he's pulling away, when he's going to change direction, it looks like he's holding them for a second. But I think that's. I mean, when the linemen are engaged, they all grab each other's jersey, and I think as long as you let go, that's what I understand is the rule. As soon as they get out to like maximum range, if you're still holding him, that's holding. But if you let go, then it shouldn't be called as a penalty. Again, I believe that some of the officials have discretion on that, which is why you shouldn't have discretion on that. Because was it holding? Was it not holding? I don't think so. I don't think anything in that was holding.
Now, what I will say is, even with me looking at that several times, looking for a hold, I didn't see anything that outright blatantly screamed to me, hey, there's a hold there.
Yeah.
So I don't see anything that I would have called as a hold in the game.
Yeah, I think I agree. There wasn't anything that I saw that was like, oh, that guy's clearly holding him when he's trying to run after the quarterback. I didn't see any of that. So my opinion is people are just complaining to complain, and they just want to make excuses because they didn't like the outcome of the game. I don't think the officials did anything wrong. I think most of the officials or most of the calls and the Bengals Chiefs games were very good.
Well, it's like any game. There's always somebody who's unhappy with the refs about something. I mean, let's face it, the refs always end up catching the blame for the way a game went down.
Yeah, you're right about that. You're absolutely right about that. And I think that's also one of the more reason why you shouldn't leave it up to discretionary. It shouldn't be up to the officials. If it's within what the parameters are of the foul, then it should be called regardless. That way you don't have problems. I like when the officials let them play, but then that's when you get these people saying, oh, it's holding, they should have called it. And I think the only way to avoid that is just to have a universal blanket. This is when we call the penalty,
And maybe they need to define the penalty a little bit more to allow for certain situations like, I'll use the kicker again as a good example. The guy that slammed into his kicking leg, he was in the air and pushed by the kicker's teammate. So is maybe put something in the rules and regulations that would allow that as incidental contact per se.
Yeah, no, but I think they do have it in there actually. I think because it's when you hit the plant leg, that's when the penalty gets called. When you hit the plant leg. If you don't hit the plant leg, then it's not a personal foul penalty, I don't believe. It's only when you hit the plant leg. That's when the personal foul gets triggered.
And how are you supposed to stop yourself from hitting the plant leg if that's the direction you're thrown and you're not touching the ground?
That's where the risk reward comes in at the guy who's rushing the kick. If you're going to go to block that punt, then you got to, if you miss it, then you're going to potentially get called for a penalty. That I think that just comes with it. I think that's just part of it. I think if you want to go for that blocked punt, fine. But if you run into that plant leg, you're going to be fouled for the personal foul, 15 yards. So if you go for it, you need to get that block, or you need to try and avoid that plant leg because they're going to call you. They call it every single time. That's one penalty where even though they have discretion, they really don't give much.
Yeah.
Every time they run into that plant leg, they call the penalty because that is actually what it is in the rule book. Once you run into that plant leg, it is a 15-yard penalty. I think if you just hit the leg that he's kicking with or knock him over, I don't think it's a full 15-yard penalty. It's only when you hit that plant leg that it's a 15-yard penalty. Again, I'm not 100% sure on that. Please leave me a comment if you have the right information on that, because I'm pretty sure the personal foul gets triggered when they hit that plant leg. But overall, the Chiefs and Bengals game was also good. We've had some great games throughout the playoffs. The Eagles game was one-sided, but the Niners, they had injuries, and then I think bad coaching decisions. I think putting Brock Purdy back in, not being able to throw the ball, ended the game for the Niners. That's the way I feel about that. If you disagree, go ahead. And I don't want to hear, oh, it was a tough call, it's a tough decision. No, I don't think it was. I think they made a clearly bad decision by putting him in. Brock Purdy couldn't throw the ball. I think that's a mistake. I think even putting in Christian McCaffrey or Usyk as the quarterback who is at least capable of throwing a forward pass, I think that gives you at least more weapons. I think that opens things up for you. The defense can't only focus on shutting down Christian McCaffrey in the run. They have to worry about the pass. And I think not doing that is what cost you the game. I think the Niners threw in the towel as soon as they brought Brock Purdy back in. After that first drive with Brock Purdy, they should have taken him out because he can't throw the ball, but they didn't. They kept him in, and I think they threw in the towel. They're like, well, we're just going to run the ball, and you're not going to come back from 2 scores down running the ball with 12 minutes left to go in the game.
Now, in the other game, I have to say I was impressed with Mahomes' performance, considering the high ankle sprain that he's battling.
Yeah.
And you saw it a couple of times in the game that he was definitely hurting.
Oh, he was feeling it.
And playing through it.
Oh, he was feeling it. No doubt about that. Yeah, you could see that he was feeling it. And, man, how about when that last scramble, the one where he got hit out of bounds, a personal foul, he had not moved that fast all game. He saved that run for that moment to be able to pull that off because he had not moved that fast all night long.
I think he knew he had one good sprint in him, and he was saving it for if it was needed.
Yeah, an emergency situation. Yeah, and I'm sorry, but the penalty on the Bengals, it's a stupid penalty. It's a stupid penalty.
Yeah, absolutely.
Both of his feet were already out of bounds. Of course, they're going to call that, especially on a quarterback. I mean, that's just stupid. That was bad playing, and I think.
And even the guy that shoved him, like, he knew it too. Like, he knew he just cost the Bengals the game at that point.
Well, he also got injured. I mean, he got injured. He ran himself right into the bench.
Right into the bench.
Yeah, and hurt his knee, I believe. I don't believe he came back in the game after that. And, I'm not going to say serves you right because I don't like to see any players get injured. I don't like to see any injuries in football. I don't like when there's injuries. But I think that it was just a dumb penalty, stupid thing to do, and that's ultimately what drove. That's ultimately what cost the Bengals the game was that play, giving them an extra 15 yards and a close field goal.
And like I said, you could tell he knew it. He was beating himself up.
Yeah.
And I'm betting. He probably was running some extra drills the next day.
No, I'm sure everybody went home. I doubt there's more training. The season's over. Yeah. So overall, I think they were pretty good games. We got a heck of a Super Bowl ahead of us in 2 weeks. Make sure you look for Mizpah and I after the Super Bowl. I think we're going to do it after Mizpah.
Yeah.
We're going to be doing our first live episode for Mayhemtainment, for Mayhem Media in general. Our first live episode. We're going to do it following the Super Bowl, our own kind of little post-game wrap-up show, sort of. So look for that after the Super Bowl on Facebook and on YouTube. Just search for Mayhem Media. Mizpah and I are also going to be working on another series like we did for House of the Dragon, the After the Dragon series that we did following that. We're going to actually do it not on a new show that's coming out, though. We're going to do it on the Yellowstone universe. We're going to start with 1883, see how that goes, see if people like it, and then we'll likely do 1923, which is the second spinoff of Yellowstone, which takes place in 1923, and then we'll do it on Yellowstone, assuming the first 2 series go well. Then we'll do the whole Yellowstone universe. That's the goal. We'd like to do the whole Yellowstone universe. Sometime in February or March, we might be debuting that. More likely, probably in March, that we'll be debuting that. So look for that, and we'll probably be doing that every other week, I believe, is what we discussed. So it'll be every 2 weeks. You can follow along, watch an episode, then you can watch our after show. I don't know if those will be live or if those will be recorded. We are going to start getting into more live episodes here now that we're going to be getting that capability. Our sister show, the Boiling Point Podcast, you can find them on YouTube, Rumble, and Facebook. Mizpah has his travel mug, which he's been drinking out of for this episode. You can find that on the storefront, bonfire.com/store/the Boiling Point Podcast. all in lowercase. Of course, his is the property of himself. We'll also be doing a live show on the Boiling Point podcast, probably next week, next Friday, before the Super Bowl, before Super Bowl Sunday. So look for that as well. You can also follow them on YouTube, Rumble, and Facebook. You can follow me on Twitter at Mayhemprez, and you can also follow me on Instagram at JDEPosterDesigns. That's with a Z at the end of it. Marcus Frederiksen is going to play us out for my executive producer, Mizpah. I am your host, JD, and that's the end.
Good night.